Ready?
Good morning and welcome. Today we are seeking input into the upcoming environmental impact report for the West Side Development Project. My name is Meaño Garcia. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Phil Burns with the Arroyo Group.
Thank you, Manny. Pleasure to lead this meeting and hope that you can find it of benefit. I'm going to begin the presentation by giving a brief overview of the West Side Specific Plan project, which we are in the middle of. The plan is not complete. The plan is under development, and we're still seeking input on the plan in general. But the purpose of the meetings that we've had last week and then this week are to basically kick off the EIR process so that we can be conducting environmental review at the same time that we also continue our work on the specific plan. So I'm sorry, I don't quite have the opportunity to screen share yet. Perfect, thank you. Share, okay, excellent. So hope you all can still see my screen there. Very good. So the West Side Specific Plan was authorized by the City Council in 2020. So the process to prepare the West Side Specific Plan was authorized by the Council in 2020 with the purpose of really preparing a long-term plan for the next step in Vernon's historical evolution. How can the city maintain the competitive advantage that it has provided to businesses, to producers of actual goods throughout the 20th century? How can that be maintained and enhanced in the 21st century? How can, to plan for how can the city and the West Side in particular become a more prosperous, diversified, and resilient community with a strong positive identity throughout the region? And then thirdly, how can the West Side help the city of Vernon respond to longer term economic, fiscal, and governance threats that the city has endured in the past? So a specific plan, of course, is not a particular development project. A specific plan consists of, we like to think of it as consisting of three main areas: a vision, regulations for the implementation of that vision, that would be zoning regulation, the EIR, as you see, we'll be talking about in just a moment, Margaret, and then implementation recommendations. Okay, future actions that are recommended to be done by the city, for example, public projects, would be approved with the specific plan, but then they would also go through a later approval as well as the project is actually kicked off, funded, contracted, etc. There are 6 goals in the specific plan, which were developed through a stakeholder advisory committee consisting of business owners, property owners, and other residents and other key members of the Vernon community. The first goal is to reinvigorate the city's competitive advantage as a center of production. Secondly, to strengthen and provide long-term stability to the city's fiscal position. Third, to increase the residential population for 3 reasons: to increase access to funding, to strengthen the city's governance and mitigate against some of those threats that I mentioned before, and thirdly, to help meet regional housing needs. Fourth goal, to diversify and reorient the West Side's land uses to take advantage of changes in the economic landscape of Southern California. Fifth, increasing amenities available to local residents and workers, such as retail, restaurants, coffee shops, print shops, places, things like that. Sixth, to create a physical environment that is supportive of diversified land uses, welcoming to the larger region and enhancing to the city's image and identity. So the basic direction of the specific plan at this point and is expressed in the notice of preparation that went out for the EIR, is to preserve most of the district for the current uses, which are industrial. But within focused areas, provide flexibility for the diversification of land use. And two of those key areas that we're looking at are what we call this cluster number one, which is the South Santa Fe district. Many of the buildings along Santa Fe and a few of the ones off of Santa Fe, historic buildings that have a lot of character, could be very valuable for non-industrial uses, such as office, creative office, live work, kinds of things. And also those buildings, though they're historic and have a lot of value for those kinds of uses, they really don't meet the needs of industrial today, and particularly distribution and logistics, which require different types of buildings that we have seen built in more recent years. And then the second, kind of major area is the Civic Center area and Santa Fe North. So again, along Santa Fe, you have a lot of these older structures because this is the city's historic Main Street. And so that is kind of one of the other things that the specific plan is working on and proposing, is strengthening Santa Fe Avenue as a walkable Main Street, where possible, introducing parking, on-street parking, better, sidewalks and crosswalks, bike facilities where possible. All of these things help make Santa Fe suitable for these different kinds of land uses that we're talking about, including residential, office, and retail. And then as Santa Fe is sort of oriented away from truck traffic and measures undertaken to significantly reduce the amount of trucks that use, heavy trucks that use Santa Fe Avenue, then improving and prioritizing the other streets, notably Alameda East and Vernon Avenue and Pacific Avenue, to be able to accommodate that truck traffic better. And indeed, to be much more functional, in the case of Alameda East, to be much more functional as a vehicular carrying street than it is today. Okay, so with that, I will hand it over to Margaret Lynn to talk about the EIR.
Great. Thank you so much, Phil. We're gonna do a quick switch on the host. There we go. So good morning. My name is Margaret Lynn. I am a senior project manager with Impact Sciences. So our meeting agenda today will include an overview of the environmental review process for the specific plan, the timeline, and the opportunities for public comment on the scope of the environmental impact report. The project team is comprised of city staff, the Arroyo Group, and Impact Sciences. So a notice of preparation was prepared and distributed by the city to solicit written comments from interested parties such as the Air Resources Board and Public Utilities Commission. Written comments can be submitted during the 30-day scoping period between April 20th and May 20th. The purpose of the scoping period is to identify environmental issues and information that should be included in the environmental impact report, and is separate from comments on the specific plan. There are no formal actions being taken on the specific plan at this time. So the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, provides statewide policies on environmental protections. The purpose of the environmental review process is to provide transparency, specifically to inform decision makers and the public about potential environmental impacts, identify ways to avoid or reduce those impacts, prevent avoidable impacts through mitigation measures or alternatives, and if a project is approved with significant impacts, to explain to the public why. So the City of Vernon is the lead agency and are responsible for preparing, circulating, in considering the environmental impacts associated with the West Side specific plan. As the environmental consultant, Impact Sciences has been hired by the city to provide expert analysis and work on behalf of the city to prepare the Environmental Impact Report, or EIR. Impact Sciences does not play an advocate role, but provides an objective assessment of the environmental impacts. State regulations require that the EIR include the following items: a table of contents, an executive summary, the environmental setting, which is basically the existing conditions, description of the project and the objectives it's trying to meet, the environmental analysis, which includes direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts, the determination of any impacts, which could be no impact, less than significant, significant, and mitigation measures if applicable, and also to include alternatives to the project that should reduce potential project impacts. A detailed discussion regarding the potential impacts are in aesthetics, air quality, cultural resources, energy, greenhouse gas emissions, hazards, hydrology, land use, noise, population, public services, recreation, transportation, tribal resources, and utilities will be included in the EIR. In addition, the findings of significance for each of these topics will be included. Given the existing conditions of the Vernon West Side specific plan, we do not anticipate there will be impacts to agriculture or forestry resources, biological resources, geology and soils, mineral resources, or wildfire. So following the scoping meeting, Impact Sciences will prepare a draft environmental impact report based on the California Environmental Quality Act requirements. Input that we receive during the scoping period and analysis based on substantial evidence. We anticipate releasing the draft EIR over the summer or fall with a 30-day public review period. Following the public review period of the draft EIR, Impact Sciences will make revisions to the EIR based on the written comments received. The final EIR will include the findings or determination of the impacts, a statement of overriding consideration for any findings that are significant but unavoidable, and a mitigation monitoring reporting program that lists the specific mitigation measures that are to be implemented to reduce impacts. There are a series of opportunities for the public to provide input on the EIR. First is the scoping period to provide input on what should be included in the EIR. Second is the draft EIR to provide input on the initial analysis and findings. And finally, during the public hearings regarding the final EIR. To provide comments, please mail the comments to the city or use the comment form on the specific plan website at www.reimaginevernon.com. Please provide your written comments on the scope of the EIR no later than May 20th, which is next Friday. So at this point, we'll go ahead and see if there's any public comments at this time. If you have a public comment, please submit your question in the chat box located toward the bottom of your screen. Once you have submitted your comment, and if you would like to speak, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature to indicate that you'd like to speak. When you are called on, please unmute and ask your question. And just to note, only written comments or questions will be included in the administrative record for the EIR. We'll give everyone a few minutes, see if anyone has any questions.
If anyone in the public has questions, like Margaret said, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll allow you to speak. Margaret, I'm going to go ahead and reclaim closed.
Yeah.
It looks like we do have a question from Steve Freed. Let me go ahead and allow you to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Yes, this is Steve Freed. I'm a Vernon property owner. I'm also chairman of the Vernon City of Commerce. What I would like to know is who received this notice that obviously I received, but was this sent out to everybody in the city, all the businesses or property owners?
Yeah.
You want to take that one, Phil?
Well, the scoping meeting is, hi, Steve, by the way, thank you for joining this meeting as well. So the EIR scoping meeting, which was last week, and this meeting, there are, the EIR scoping meeting, which was held last week, is a legally required meeting. And there are certain procedures that the meeting is required to follow. And so I understand, the city staff has distributed the notice in keeping with those procedures. Again, this is just a meeting to solicit input on what needs to be studied in the EIR. So there will be another public meeting once the draft EIR is available, in which, as well as, of course, additional engagement opportunities on the specific plan itself as we move forward. More detail.
And we have also communicated the event on social media, the city's social media, and through just engagement in general with the community face to face, and directing people to the reimaginevernon.com webpage so that individuals can be up to speed as to what's happening with this very exciting project. So
it's a very exciting project, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it all turns out. But the question is, at what point in time will everyone in the city, meaning the homeowners, the property owners, and possibly even the tenants in the city, be notified and have a chance to add their input?
Certainly before any public hearing, then anyone who is within the radius that is stipulated, the 500-foot radius from any areas that are, I would think, within the entire within 500 feet of anything in the entire west side, even if not the entire west side is going to be rezoned.
And Phil, if I could just add to, in addition to the noticing requirements that Phil mentioned, there are specific requirements for noticing of an EIR and of a scoping meeting, posting with the county clerk. The city did outreach within the website and to typical organizations that the city would outreach to. If there are other organizations or individuals that you would like to be on the mailing list for notifications about the EIR when it's available, please provide that information to us and we'll make sure that they're included.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, it looks like we do have another hand raised by Brian. I'll go ahead and allow him to talk. All right, go ahead, Brian.
Hi, this is Brian Bailey with Papco Paper, and I'm not sure if this is the right forum to ask this, but as far as the truck traffic, moving that from Santa Fe to Alameda, how is that? How do you see that would be enforced? And are you going to study the impact that would have and take comments from businesses that would be affected? How do you see this whole effort going forward? Because it's, have you studied how many trucks utilize that corridor now, and what that impact would be on the side streets that connect from Santa Fe to Alameda? Just curious.
Yeah, so Phil, I can answer that. I think that's kind of a mix of a project question and an EIR question, from if I'm hearing correctly. So Within the EIR, there is a traffic study that's being prepared that will be summarized within the EIR. The traffic study is going to be looking at, a variety of different, how the traffic is moving within the city. And part of it, is based on the changes in truck traffic. So to the extent that that's part of the project, it will be analyzed within the EIR, and the environmental effects of that will be addressed. In terms of other community impacts, we don't necessarily get into those in the EIR, but I think that might be more on the project side for Phil to talk about.
Sure. Yeah. No, thanks for raising it, Brian. It is more of a project issue, or a plan. Sorry, specific plan issue. So, we'll be continuing to be in conversation about this as we build out the specific plan. For your knowledge and for the benefit of everyone, we have done a pretty robust traffic modeling exercise. I'd say well beyond the norm in understanding traffic patterns within the area. How many trucks are likely to continue to need to use Santa Fe on a permanent basis, and not to say that it's an exact number, but there certainly has been thought that has gone into that. And I know that one other thing that is anticipated within the specific plan is also to, this is one of those actions that is an action that will be recommended in the specific plan. It will not be implemented right away. And before it is implemented, there will be another city decision. There will be another vote of the city council, to actually put into effect enhancements to Alameda East. And then after those enhancements are established, then restrictions on Santa Fe.
Now, I would just like to add to that when I saw our pretty robust analysis on the traffic flow on Santa Fe and Alameda, I was really impressed with the what could be done to improve traffic flow in Alameda. And we saw a benefit both on Alameda and Santa Fe. And it seems like that's a standalone project. It's just worth doing based on the preliminary results that we saw. Would you agree with that, Phil?
Yeah.
Very exciting.
So what, I mean, the benefit would be, I assume, less truck traffic on Santa Fe, but what is the benefit to the businesses and the drivers? Because I think that it would extend the distance to access to the freeways and extend it would cost them time and money, right?
Yeah, well, I think the big benefit is making Alameda a much more viable corridor than it is today, and potentially a better corridor than Santa Fe is today. We're not going to say that every single business necessarily is going to be better off with this than what it is today, but of course there are trade-offs in everything, and so businesses may see benefits in being in a more vibrant area where they're able to attract employees, people who want to come and work in this area because there are places to go eat lunch and there's interesting things happening in the neighborhood. They may have opportunities to meet other people, do business in the area, get new contracts and do business development. So there's there are multiple factors at play.
And what stood out to me was the amount of through traffic that we see going through Vernon. And what improving the flow in Alameda does is it almost like instinctively or just from just testing moves traffic that's just going through Vernon to Alameda away from Santa Fe, which that then improves the local traffic to any business on Santa Fe. So in general, what we saw that just improves the overall movement of vehicles, goods and services in the west side.
So is your hope that you make the corridor so much more efficient that people voluntarily use it rather than Santa Fe?
Hopefully Google would guide them in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, we don't know exactly what form all of this is going to take. I think, you know, regulation, some form of regulation is definitely on the table, right? So it's not to say that we think that only, you know, this will just magically happen by itself necessarily, but these are as to what form and order, you know, regulations are rolled out, you know, what kinds of permits are offered to businesses that are actually located along Santa Fe and have to use the street. All of those things are as yet undetermined, and we'll continue to work through those through the specific plan process.
So it's conceivable that you could, you know, ban 18-wheelers on Santa Fe from the southern border to, say, where City Fiber is located. Is that what we're kind of talking about here?
If I could just jump in really quickly, I think I want to provide opportunities for people to talk about the scope of the EIR. That's the purpose of this meeting. And it sounds like these are some specific questions about the project or the plan. So I think, you know, if there's an opportunity to have that discussion, you know, maybe later, so we can provide some opportunity for people to provide their input on the EIR, I think that might be appreciated.
Well, we're talking about diesel exhaust, right? And, you know, the impact of that on Santa Fe. And I think that's an environmental concern. You've got a school on the corner of Pacific and Santa Fe, or Vernon and Santa Fe. And if you're simply moving that truck traffic so that it's going from Pacific across Santa Fe to Vernon, you could conceivably be increasing the diesel exhaust near that school, I would think. So I think this does have environmental impacts, what I'm discussing.
So noted that we'll study it, you know, as a part of the EIR. Of course, you know, Santa Fe is also a street that runs by the school as well. So either way, whether they're on Santa Fe or Vernon there.
Yeah, I mean, as Phil mentioned, air quality is definitely one of the things that we're going to be looking at, especially with the amount of trucks that go through the area. So that's something that definitely will be looked at in the EIR. I saw there were some questions in the Q&A, if we want to take a look at those.
So those were submitted by Susie. So Susie, if you want to go ahead and ask your questions.
Actually, Susie does have her hand raised. I'll go ahead and allow her to talk.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, great. First of all, I'd like to add on to that conversation that was going about traffic. I really would like to see the results, because I know I used to work downtown LA, and driving into Vernon, you either get off at Alameda, or you get off at Santa Fe, or you get off on Soto. Every time to come home, if you get off that freeway and it's crowded, it's worse during this time. So I'd like to see a really good study in those three exits. So you either go on another freeway, go further out to come back into the city. So that is very important to us. Second, the EIR is very important to me because I'm not only a property owner, but I'm a resident. I expected to see the responses to the first list of questions that I had from the first document that was given to us to review, but I really didn't see it addressed in the EIR. Are you at any point going to respond to the public comments that were first given, or are you going to tell me they were updated, so I should check them off on this document? Please respond how the first comments are being handled.
Ms. Moore, are you referring to the comments submitted on the housing element draft?
It was in February, I don't know. I know it was part of this project.
Yeah, and then, so that was part of the, so that was the draft of the housing element, which the two projects are linked, right? Because the West Side Specific Plan is the vehicle that will be used to allow housing in the city. But they actually are separate documents and are going through separate processes.
Okay, but a lot of the comments in that first one does deal with this project severely.
Certainly, we've taken note.
Yeah. And I wasn't notified of this. I did sign on to that image subscribe, never got any notice that this meeting was handling. So it sounds like you're looking for the information to be shared through the regular council meeting, which I don't always attend because I've got things to do and I usually read it later. So you may want to, and I went on that website to see if this meeting was listed or find out more information. I couldn't find anything that was helpful. So I may suggest that you may want to relook at your communication method so that more people are notified, more people are involved. And then we're not scrambling in the last moment to review your document and figure out what it's supposed to cover. It is important. I understand the importance. We do want to grow the city, but I find it very difficult to stay on track with this project.
Yeah, we understand. We understand. And thank you for your comment. I'm sure that we provide, we'll be reviewing our communication methods to make sure that the community can be as informed about this as possible and have the opportunity to provide input. Good thing at this point, there is no draft specific plan at this point to comment on, and there is no draft EIR yet to comment on either.
And also, I know you said you submitted comments on the housing element, but I would encourage you to submit comments through this process as well to ensure that your comments are captured. And there won't be, a specific response to comments in the EIR. It's more that the comments that you provide help us to decide what we should be looking at within the EIR. So the comments will be, they'll be included as an appendix to the EIR, the comments that we receive, but there won't be a specific response to them. It's just that they help us decide what to look at within the EIR. So I would definitely encourage you to submit your comments again.
The due date, I think, is the 20th, correct?
That is
Yeah,
correct.
the 20th.
Okay.
All right, we do have another question by Melissa. Melissa, I'll go ahead and allow you to talk. If you could please state your name and the business that you're associated with. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melissa Ibarra, resident in the city of Vernon. I do have a question on this EIR that you're going to do on the extensive. I'm just joining now. I joined later. I apologize. But I want to make sure that when you guys do the analysis on the dirt and the soil, wherever you're putting residential at, that is, it's intense because the multiple years, the decades of companies that are on the sites where you guys have established housing. I think with the many environmental changes that have happened throughout the decades, we really need to do a really good extensive soil analysis. So I want to make sure that's in the EIR.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
So if anyone has any more questions, if you could please raise your hand. If not, I do not see any more hands raised, Manny. We have Melissa raising her hand again. I'll go ahead and allow her to talk. Go ahead, Melissa.
Sorry, one more. I forgot about the traffic. The traffic study needs to be clear because the traffic's bad. And these studies that you guys have talked to us about, that you guys are redirecting trucks to Alameda, you guys really got to look into the Alameda and the Long Beach corridor as well. And the blue line or the metro line right there, it runs the way it runs. So I don't know how you're going to allow for traffic to go around the issues that you guys are stating. So that's another important detail that needs to be reviewed when you guys are doing the EIR.
Melissa, just want to make sure I understood the specific issue you're talking about on Long Beach Boulevard with the blue line. Is it with the blue?
Everything from Long Beach to Alameda to Santa Fe to Pacific to Soto. So as we're developing the west side, your east and west side traffic flow, your north and south side traffic flow, as you're redirecting trucks to the east and the west, you guys really need to watch that traffic flow. There is a lot of traffic, and I don't think you guys understand it because you guys don't drive in Vernon, you know, and these little studies that you're doing actually physically drive in Vernon during the day and the impact that you'll have on the school. You know, that's the other thing is you have traffic during school hours, parents dropping off kids, parents backing up. I mean, at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you have parents waiting for the gate at the elementary school backed up along Santa Fe and along Vernon Avenue. So keep that in mind as you guys are working on this as well. So traffic is very intense for the EIR as well as environmental impacts and the dirt in the soil.
Absolutely.
And the noise and the smell.
Yes, absolutely. That's an excellent point. I pick up my grandson at Vernon Elementary School, so I'm very familiar with the issues firsthand. Also, in terms of the traffic analysis, fortunately, through cell phone data, we have a very good picture of traffic analysis. Many decades ago, I used to do the traffic counters for the city of Vernon, so I have a very interesting perspective. I sit there at the intersections, you just click the board. Thank God for cell phones, right? So yeah, the city of Vernon is about traffic. Traffic is the movements of goods and services, and when traffic is good, business is good. Through traffic, however, doesn't necessarily impact the city of Vernon directly. So we're very concerned about those aspects, you know, moving goods and services as efficiently as possible, keeping track of the residents and their needs, and doing the best that we can with a very significant issue of big vehicles with little vehicles throughout our streets.
Okay, yeah, just keep that in mind because you have a lot of businesses along Vernon, a lot of the businesses along Santa Fe that actually back their trucks into the building that backs up traffic as well. So keep that in mind as you guys are looking into this part of the EIR. And I think that's it. Traffic, environmental, soil, and smells. Those are my 4 major points that I want to really see a good EIR on this part of the project.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question, Melissa. Manny, we do have Susie up for another question. I'll go ahead and allow her to talk.
Outstanding.
Susie, go ahead.
Thank you. There's one thing that I haven't been able to get a answer on from the people that I've been talking as they look at putting in the new housing. When you start looking at traffic and you start looking at flows or whatever you're looking for, you need to consider how many people are going to be in every apartment house, whatever you plan, and what's the max the street will be able to hold. Because right now, parking in Vernon is almost none. We have a property next door that we're able to use when people come over or people go to the school, or I mean, they're constantly using the parking because there's no parking anyplace. And we've got to consider that there's more than 2 cars per household. Sometimes there's 3 cars, sometimes there's 4 cars because everybody drives in whatever they live in. So parking is another strenuous event here in Vernon. There's no public parking. Thank you.
Yes.
We understand. Yeah, the parking is not within the scope of the EIR, but it is being addressed in the specific plan. And certainly, you know, we have a consultant on that is handling parking. And there will be a significant discussion of that within the specific plan. We should note that this type of housing, multifamily housing, live, work, the kind of people that would be interested to live in a place like Vernon, that would likely be interested in living in new development within Vernon in this environment, we would anticipate would be probably non-family households. It'd be households without children, probably singles or couples. And that's definitely borne out if you go to look who lives in the arts districts, look who lives in other industrial areas that are mixed use. Today, you'll see a lot of very small households live there. But certainly we take the parking issue very seriously.
Alrighty, Manny, I don't see any more hands raised.
Just kind of like to sum it up, this is the process of public engagement. And, we have been working on this project for about 2 years, where it's very exciting that we're finally at to the EIR, and there will be other opportunities for interested parties to provide comments. Once again, written comments are important. Target the period expires on May the 20th, 2022. Previously, Margaret showed how you can submit written comments. You can submit written comments through the reimaginevernon.com webpage, and also in writing. Attention, Dan Wall, City of Vernon, 4305 Santa Fe Avenue, Vernon, California, 90058. All written comments are considered. They may not necessarily be specifically addressed. Is that correct, Jessica? But they form the concept of the analysis that needs to be performed based on the input from the residents and those who could be impacted by the project. I want to thank everybody for participating, and please be safe and have a great day.
Actually, Manny, just 1 second. I do see a question being raised by Kevin. Will there be any retail grocery stores opening as well? Is this question?
Yeah, so that also a specific plan question. I would think the retail is a big component of this specific plan, and a big reason why why, as I mentioned, one of the goals, right, isn't to increase the number of amenities that are available to residents and to business owners and employees in the area. So retail will definitely be, definitely part of the vision, and it will be encouraged through regulation. Of course, it's up to each individual property owner and developer to determine exactly what kind of business and space they put into their project. Certainly retail will be encouraged, and to the extent that the city owns property as well, such as the Civic Center site and the adjacent sites to that, if those are developed, I'm sure that the city will be very interested in finding retail uses that provide a lot of benefits to the residents, and things that today residents have to drive far away to get.
Alrighty.
Very good, Matt. You see anybody else?
Nope, that is it.
Once again, I want to thank everybody, and be safe and have a great day.